My name is Ronzakai. This is Little Gay Guide, and I have the honor, privilege, and downright pleasure of introducing Midori. Hello, Midori.
Mwah, 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 mwah. Hello.
Hello. So, because we know each other very, very, very superficial, at least initially from my leather years, and then I got to know more of your work over the years, and it's been a good, I think, a decade plus now. And I've been a fan, so I need to preface with that. I am a fan, true and honest, a deeply rooted fan in what you say, what you promote, and your voice in general. So, without further ado, I will let you talk about yourself rather than me.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. I think this is great. I was so delighted to get the invite. I am, well, let's see, I'm a sexuality educator, a sexologist. I coach, I teach. I founded Rope Dojo. I wrote the first English instruction book on Japanese bondage. Been doing this for the teaching for a while and the paving for a while. I live in the Bayview district of San Francisco. And I'm very proud of the neighborhood. But originally, I'm from Tokyo. So let's see, what else? I am a nice middle-aged Asian lady who drives poorly. Uh, let's see, I'm a crazy cat lady. And I'm an artist. I engage in I create socially engaged artwork in all sorts of different mediums. A lot of people, it's funny, a lot of people who know me from the kink side don't know about my artwork, and all the people who know about my artwork don't know I actually professionally teach in the kink. It's funny, and then like
Some of us do, some of us do, and I will actually. Your art is very visceral, very participatory, and very distinct in its voice. I like you just reflect to the fact that kink can be a facet that people double click on, or at least enhance the perception of another person. In other words, if I frame you as kink, then therefore you are king. Back with the title, people framed me as a pageant, which is, by the way, not that far from the truth, but the pageantry of it rather than the other facets of my life. I'm in startups, I'm in tech. It didn't matter. It mattered that I held this title or this sash. Back to you and your art. If I am to pinpoint why I wanted to have this conversation almost the most, out of all the things you said, I would actually double click on the middle aged Asian woman more than anything, because your voice, specifically between your art, kink, and the middle aged Asian woman, at least recently, has resonated with not just systemic problem, an a grievance that is now finally finding a voice, and that is the linchpin of this conversation. So why don't you start from there?
uh, uh,
Yeah.
gee, that's okay. You know what? I think this might relate. I have recently had the honor of writing a chapter for a textbook, the textbook for sex therapists, family therapists, and counselors dealing with BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, and their sexuality. And they had me write a chapter that, and they left it to me to pick a topic. And I wrote about, and then they approved, I wrote about the women of Asian diaspora. And for women, I also include trans women, cis women, and all range of people with,
Identity
yeah, people with
expression.
relationship to women or femme, right? But women of the Asian diaspora and kink. And talking about the layers in that, many therapists and many general population folks in North America just don't think about. And increasingly lately, there have been discussions around BIPOC in kink spaces, BIPOC in art spaces, what's appropriation, what's misappropriation, and all of this conversation. And there are certain aspects of it that I've been talking about it for years, but falling either on deaf ears, or you and I have been talking about this, or getting white mansplained at.
How does that feel to have, for lack of a better definition, and I apologize, the zeitgeist catching up to you when you were presenting the zeitgeist for yourself. That was the modus operandi of your life prior to this moment. Yet it seems like culture, and I'm
Mm.
talking specifically culture at large, which is unfortunately our oppressors, our definers, our thought leaders. And they're not thought leaders because they're thinking better than us. They're thought leaders because they're being projected or profoundly more amplified than us. How does that feel?
Okay. So, first word that comes is exhausting. It's exhausting at a very personal, in the moment, in the body. It is exhausting. I have been talking about the um, transnational. I guess the word now that is more people are hearing is the intersectionality. But for those of us who live with multiple identities, with multiple cultural heritages, multiple ways of navigating in the world, and it's not it's culture, it's heritage, it's country of origin, it's citizenship, relationship status, it's who we love, who we fuck, it's all of that meshed in. And for people who have few check boxes, it's so easy. Oh my god, it seems so easy, and they don't think about.
They don't even know.
And for the rest of us, you as well, because how many check boxes of who am I do you have? Tick 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 tick. And for each of those check boxes, there's all these internalized expectations, externally externally thrust upon expectations, etc., etc. Anyhow, for I don't know the last 25 years or so, I've been an out Asian pervert artist, which let me tell you, 25 years ago, not many of us that were the key is out,
Public.
public, out, right? Not a whole lot, right? Um, because model minority, um, and parents wanting us to be model minority, and all go out and be bananas. Yellow on the outside, white on the inside.
Not by choice though, because if let's actually dive into this a bit.
So, I've been talking about this for a long time, and also feeling like there were Asian American folks that didn't want me to be talking, right? Didn't want this. There's that. Then there's the white predominant culture that wants Asian female bodies to be either all submissive or all exotic dragon lady, or maybe the lady at the laundromat and nail salon. Then in the kink world, there's this orientalization, not uncommonly, simply blatant racism and misogyny that gets a pass under the oh no, we're honoring Japan, or oh, you don't have a sense of humor, this is just play. I'm like, okay, well, apparently having an entirely racist attitude and putting a label on it saying, oh, we respect it. It's like, yeah, it's like putting on a ceremonial headdress for indigenous people and saying that's respecting. But so I've been doing this for years and years and years, and I'm getting to a point of being exhausted. And it's interesting that just at the point that I'm about to just throw in the towel and say, this is not worth it. And then this year, I think thanks to Black Lives Matter, I am getting more media interest and interest from critically thinking people who want me to say a word or two. So,
Hey, thank you. I don't have any room, or I should not have any room outside of understanding, like you said, there are certain check boxes I can check coming out as a throuple, vocationally talking about my partners, but the understanding of the distance and the chasm and the length that comes from my experience and my privilege and me swimming in it versus what exists in the outside world, which is for you, I would say, seems to be an insurmountable chasm that now everybody's talking about would be exhausting. How do you navigate that? For me, it feels like privilege. It doesn't feel like I'm it doesn't feel like pain. Actually, on the contrary, the pain comes from understanding that you go through, and the people, but the BIPOC people around us, LGBTQ, specifically trans, our trans brothers and sisters, different gender expressions, women, all that together. You are all three. I have no grounds to speak on outside of understanding that I have a mountain to look and try to describe. So, exhaustion aside, how does that feel?
Oh God, let's see. I am hopeful. I am hopeful. I am hopeful that there's the words and the concerns being more commonly addressed and thought about. It is encouraging. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do. So,
If our audience is about work, what is, because your work comes from your work. I mean, your
yeah,
work is expression.
yeah.
It's you have worked for decades on this. We're coming as a culture to this moment, and I can only imagine, by the way, the feeling of looking at the culture as a whole and like, oh, you guys woke up just now. Well, thank you. Gee, thanks. But what is the follow up when this moment is now, and your art is your art, and your kink promotion is your kink promotion, and this middle ground of they're asking you questions now. We're asking questions. I'm asking questions now.
It gives me hope. Now the thing is, all right, so I attended and participated in this amazing performing arts event called Sacred Wounds, and it is an avant-garde performance event by queer people of the Asian diaspora. This didn't exist before. Now it's happening. The event is called Sacred Wounds, and I like that title for whatever the curator has in mind for that title. The talking about wounds, I think is really significant here. All right. So if I am some manner of a warrior, I have wounds. Some of those wounds become scars. Some of those scars will become part of who I am. But as somebody who, for those of us who are warriors and fighters and change makers, we also have to have a balance of rest time and downtime. Sometimes I watch my friends and colleagues being in like all fight all the time mode, and that's not going to work. I mean, it's like working out, right? It's like getting in shape for whatever, for a big marathon, for a big contest. You can't be like in complete muscle exhaustion the whole time, or you're not going to have the ability to be resilient, right? So how I cope with the exhaustion is, you know what? There are times when what I need to do is just goof the fuck off.
There are change makers around you, and you are one yourself, and I think of you in many ways, considering your practice, for lack of a better definition. Please correct me if that is not encompassing enough. uh, but there is an element of mentorship that is in a lot of your rhetoric, be it written or otherwise. By the way, it's I see it in your art, or at least I feel it in your art. There's an yes, you well deserved. You are an aspiration and an inspiration at the same time. There is a mentorship. There is an element of not just authorship and dictatorship in terms of where we can go, but rather there's an element that I feel when I reflect or interact with your art, be it Shibari or even a conversation piece. Which, by the way, recently I will touch. Your posts recently on social media have been not a provocation, but a freaking light bulb. They've been a light bulb because that's what drove this initiation. It baffled me that there aren't more voices like yours. It baffled me that maybe because you are proficient and resilient, and you are, maybe because you're so strong, and I do consider you're a strong human being in my mind. You're a change maker. Uh, because you took that mantle on, and you think of yourself as a warrior, and you act as one, and you definitely enact actions onto the world as a warrior. I look aside and I look at those posts, and I'm like, if that is not a damn fucking light bulb for you, I mean, you as an audience, then what the fuck will be?
What did I post?
You
Hold
were
on.
posting specifically about, it was specifically the mansplaining around Asian women and submission. There was one post. There was another post about specifically women voices and femme voices, and your experience with the conversation, and specifically an argument online that devolved into not even a shouting match. I don't know what to call those outside of.
Okay, yeah. Right. So, dear viewers, some of these posts are like serious questions, and some of it is me going, "Why did I just get this random stranger sending me this message?" And then I'll post the message. Open discussion. Yeah, yeah. Sharing that, I think, makes it also easier for other people to go, "Oh, I got that same, or I got a version of that same stupid message." And it's not just about the like piling on somebody who's being a dumbass, but showing the impact that thoughtless, careless, selfish action has upon real impact that has on real people. I think engaging like kindness and compassion, it's like people give a lot of lip service to that because
It looks good and it feels good. I mean,
yeah, but
but
yeah, it requires a moment of pause to say, write something out and then look at it and go, this is a real dick thing to say. If there's just that moment of go, huh.
are you hoping to provide both the sense of familiarity, which I think a lot of compassion and empathy starts from, I resonate with that experience because I know it personally myself, or I relate to something similar. I do believe in that human psyche construct of, it's not necessarily just the zeitgeist outside, it's also the zeitgeist inside, and empathy works from there. When you post those things, are you hoping for other people to get a sense of either inkling or kinship to a the shared pain, which is one, or two, hopefully both, I don't know, the ability for them to maybe say to another person down the road, the douchebag that said something inappropriate, or the douchebag that didn't think through what they initiated in terms of harming, which is just called harm. I don't want to sugarcoat harm.
Mhm.
Uh, are you providing for that pause? What is the end result?
I don't know what the end result will be.
Oof.
It's like my artwork, right? I put out something from my heart, and I may have some hopes as to what might happen, but it's time and time again, especially with my interactive artwork, I am surprised, delightfully surprised by interpretations and reactions that the guests and the people experiencing it will have, and then I learn from that. So I actually don't know. No, so I know that's
It's not a couple because
yeah.
okay, but you do know to some extent. You know that the challenge, and you are, I will use your term because I fell in love with it. Change makers by virtue, and you are one. You know that you're enacting a conversation. You know that you're enacting a dialogue. And even if there was a scattershot into the dark when it comes to those posts, case in point, anecdotally speaking, this is a result.
I have some ideas. Okay, so all right, when I have posted FetLife idiot, have you seen my responses to FetLife idiots?
Dear viewers, please look that up because it was a lot.
And I don't know, they came like a lot, and like it's like different phases of the pandemic. This was the phase when like all my exes texted me. This was like the phase when like random strangers sent me like weird hookup messages. And this was a phase when like all the political do-gooders were sending me stuff, and I was like, there were all these phases, right? But all right, so there was this phase when I kept getting hit up by really dumb people, and to the standard statement of there's no such thing as a stupid question. No, there are stupid
Oh,
questions.
there are
There
plenty
are
of stuff.
really dumbass questions. It's
Can we call them up on it? Do you? Well,
um,
I know you have. You
yeah.
have.
So dumbass questions. I have a semi-standard reply. All sounds incredible. It's my I call it stick up my ass snark. So I pretend I really put on the stick up the ass, starched, proprietary, super formal response. But it's full of snark. And anyone who knows me knows that I am doing a put down, but super snarky. So a fun result is I've had people ask me if they could like copy my template as a reply, right? And I'm like, yes, go for it. And I think the responses, a famous one was, "Dear Mr. Pottyface, thank you sincerely for reaching out to me, though I believe we are not acquainted. I believe it considerably impolite to make such explicit request. And in additionally, what you are requesting is of great risk to one's digestive system, as you may have expose yourself to potential transmission from E. coli. If you are not familiar, here is a link to CDC. Additionally, your desire to do so during this pandemic, link to CDC, is of disregard to other people's health. Blah, 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 blah. Regards."
Can I just can I just write life goals, hashtag life goals, because I would love my response to become template for somebody someday. How do okay, that is a wonderful tangent. Speak about sex during COVID because yes, it's a I don't know. We talked about race and my conversation specifically, race's conversation with me. He's on the other spectrum, which is very much pause, push. We don't know enough. Risk mitigation requires a divorcing of sorts from the conversation of sexual activity. Your templated response tells me there is a similar vein of don't risk others, don't be a jerk. There's serious implications to that. Where are you personally with where we are now?
So, personally, me personally, I enjoy intense amount of physically engaging with people that I know emotionally intimately, which means like race, yeah, I'm putting things on pause. I am keeping in contact and sending emotional care
Oh.
to people that matter to me and people that I'm intimate with. Um, and what I'm doing with my sexual energy is I am sublimating that into my creative energy and sublimating that into maintaining my resilience. Oh, honey, I've been working out.
I see that. I've been getting fat. Do you think that the conversion comes by your own, what seems to be an innate nature? Because I don't want to speak for artists in general, and I definitely don't want to broad brush, but you just talked about a very complex conversion in a very distinct and clear way, which is physical energy and physical sexuality is now being transferred or converted into something else. Uh, what can you enlighten us? I am not, I'm a creator. Yes, I'm not a creative. There's a difference. I, what would you tell us, the population that thinks about the channeling or the conversion or the energy transfers, to so to speak?
Okay. I can speak only for myself and my own awareness. Um, I am aware that, all right, so I know that cool word and awareness that's been coming up lately is demisexual, right? People who need intimate emotional connection in order to feel sexual arousal and sexual intimacy. Yay. There's something kind of related to that, maybe. For me, about I think the reason that I am drawn to kink is because for me, sexuality can include the genitals, doesn't have to. What it must include is creativity and desire, whether it is desire coming in or desire going out. Okay? Um, but it must have, it is an expression of creativity. And so I think my sexuality becomes a subset, my sexuality, subset of creativity. And right now, with limited amount of spoons, limited amount of of hours in the day, limited all resources, we have to end up prioritizing. I'm fortunate to not have to be responsible for care of others right now. So I'm not a parent. I'm not taking care of elders. I'm not, teaching school kids, taking care of patients, all the people who have to take care of other people. So that's not something I coach, but it's very different than, say, my friend who's an ER nurse.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Right.
I'm coaching people on resilience and creativity. That's what I do in my private coaching, which is very different than my friend who's taking care of COVID patients.
Yeah, a bit, a tad.
Um, so prioritizing my resources, if as my sexuality is a subset of creativity, and my creative sexual interaction with other people isn't necessarily available, it just rolls right into the other aspects of creativity for me. And I think that's been made possible because I've had to investigate. I've had to really deconstruct and investigate and go deeply into myself as to what exactly for me and for me alone is sexuality. And why is it that my quote day job, my one career, is teaching about sexuality, and my other full-time careers as artist. And I've been challenged around that, where I find that if I get like annoyed or pissed off, that's like a good point of investigation for me. I have gotten annoyed and pissed off when people see my artwork and say, oh, it's erotic art and it's bondage art. And I get all pissy. No, it's not. No, it's not. Wah! And then I have to stop and think, well, why is that pissing me off so much? It's pissing me off so much because they got it backwards. My bondage, or my flogging, or my kink play, or my mind fuckery, um, is a subset of a larger creative expression. So when people get it backwards, I feel misunderstood.
And diminutive.
Yeah,
It's smaller. It's smaller
yeah,
than the yeah.
yeah, and no one wants to be misunderstood, and that's the whole thing about intersectionality, is we want to be understood for the complexity of who we are. So I would rather, it would excite me if somebody said, "Oh, I can your your art has informed how you sex play, as opposed to your sex play informing your art." And if somebody said your art, your performative stuff, and your social engagement, and your sleight of hand, and your performative work, and your humor is affecting your sexuality, I'm like, oh my god, thank you, oh my god, you get me. So yeah, it's being misunderstood. Yeah, it comes down to being misunderstood sucks, right? So for me, investigating what part does sexuality play in me,
It's beautiful.
and I think it's going to be a different answer for everyone. And there's a part of me as a sexuality educator that I find honestly frustrating, because there isn't a general larger discourse yet around sexuality for you, for you, for you, for you, for what purpose?
I have to ask something. When you present, there is we often go in terms of our consumption of either information or beat media or even thoughts or even conversation. We go to the single facet that is the distilled version of either the person or the interaction made. You very much just now touched this idea of your art as a whole gets expressed in various ways. And I think that is a beautiful way of, to me, what I hear is there are so many facets to a human being, and every time they're pared down into one of those facets is an insult. Every time there's just one. How can we do better? What do you see as an educator and as a leader or change maker? Again, I'll echo your sentiment. How can we teach ourselves and others in the same process, in the same breath, to do better about this? Because we are fucking complex. We're not a single facet. There is a world of art, even in non-artists, um, that wants to be expressed.
Yeah. Humans are creative. Humans create. Um, Humans have the potential to be good, to be evil, to be constructive, to destructive, all of that. But it's all upon this evolutionary feature and benefit of creativity. I mean, the capacity for language, right? Capacity for language. There is an infinite potential for an infinite number of Shakespeares,
Touche.
right? So creativity, and I encounter a lot of people who say, "Oh, I'm not an artist," or "I'm not creative," and a lot of my artwork has to do with tricking the public into making stuff, and because we've been taught that creativity, it's like, these like heroes, like, no, if you, okay, so rap artists like humble me. It's like, you can do that with words. I mostly try to form a complete sentence that another person can, and you do this with words.
With bars and beats and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And you make it into music and movement and personal expression and all like 15 emotions stuffed into like a, how do you do
I
that?
will turn the mirror to you and will say, I have no idea how you do what you do, but I admire it nonetheless because you do.
So here's a simple thing that all right, so what you're talking about is about flattening. Okay, so like racism is about flattening other people of perceived skin tone into a simplicity, right? Cultural appropriation is about flattening. It's like, it's funny, people with all the flattening Orientalist ideas about Japanese bondage. In Japan, the flattening of the ideas of Americans, it goes something like this: all Americans have big houses and guns, and all Americans like blonde women with big boobs. That's the belief. Yeah, and we run
How,
around shooting each other in the street
how do
while
you
living in
how
big
do you
houses.
address that? How do you address because the nature of discourse and the nature of human dialogue often simplifies because we have to flatten things to make them palpable. We have
Human,
to flatten things to make them digestible. How do we bridge that? How do we get across the aisle and go, because like let's marry two things you just said. The world of creativity, your creativity, your humane and human creativity expresses itself in many venues. And all society wants to do in order to make it palpable, generally speaking, is to flatten each one of those facets into a digestible idea or tidbit or notion. You play that game really well. I love your art for its provocative nature, not because it's provocative, by the way, because it evokes a conversation.
thank you. I think one, humor, right? Humor, because a lot of us laugh when humans laugh when we're nervous, when we don't know how to like process an emotion. And if humor is used well, it gives an opportunity for the message to make it through that psychological crack while giving everyone an opportunity to just relax a little. So humor is one. Okay, so brilliant comedians, so much respect, and brilliant memes, so much respect. So there's one. The other one that I actively teach in my classes is, I call it verb not noun. Verb not noun. So in my teaching, yeah,
Go on.
in my teaching, and during my courses, uh, as at the beginning, people will say, I'm a dominant, I'm a submissive, I'm a puppy, I'm a daddy, I'm a, whatever, right? Insert those grinder labels. Yeah. And fine at the beginning,
Insert subgenre here. Go on. Yes.
right? And then I talk about and get people to shift. So one is not a dominant. And so I would be talking to somebody, you are not a dominant, you are engaging in dominance. Like why do that? And then I give an example, right? I could say, I'm a dominant. Okay, now picture leather bar now, okay?
I
The guy
can.
walks in, I'm a dominant. You see him, right?
I
Okay.
do.
And he pulls up next to you and says, I'm a dominant. I'm Master Dragon Breath, right? You can see the dude, right? Let's Do another one. Guy walks in the bar, saunters up next to you, and says, I want to dominate you. Right? So, verb, not noun, or I am a submissive versus I crave to submit to you.
Oof.
In that simple shifting, and sometimes I can feel people be like, oh, it's clunky. People know what it means. I'm like, no, they don't.
No.
And if we keep saying, I am a, we paint ourselves into the corners about possibilities and expectations. So what if somebody is big old top daddy, but tonight would really like to be tied down just to like not have to think about the bullshit in the world and have the boy take care of daddy.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's this internalized idea that daddy man must always
Assertive, insertive, and by the way, how many times? And I have to ask you this question because I've never asked it before. I think almost anyone. It's to me striking as weird, and I would say the rudimentary rule is 35. It's just random number. Past 35, let's just say past 35. It felt to me weird that people would go past 35 and go, I am a total X. Now 35 is an arbitrary number. I came up with it just because it felt weird.
Mhm.
It could be any maturity level, but I just call it mature. And I'm curious to your thoughts on this because every time that anybody would say I'm a total X, and it will be over a certain age or seems experienced enough, my red flag would be why? What are you doing to your expression? Why are you in that corner?
You have no life.
Who has wronged you?
You have no life. You don't get out.
I'm like, who did what to you?
I mean, yeah, if it just yeah, I agree. I agree with you in that it's just like it makes you really sound like a uninteresting person, and they're trying so hard. It's just so
Back to
it's kind of
you.
like they are a gadget that can only be used for one thing.
You're a serrated knife at 10 inches and you only deal with loaves that are 5 grains. Well, that is awesome for 5 grain loaves and for serrated knives. You realize we're talking about kitchens here.
Yeah, it's like one of those weird gadgets as seen on TV.
Okay, let's say I want to rope something in from something you said previously.
Uh-huh.
You were talking about flattening of ideas. You were
Mhm.
talking about racism is a flattening of a culture or skin tone. You were talking about even expression when it comes to sexuality, like I am a dominant versus I want to dominate you, seems and sounds to me like a flattening of something that had so much more depth to it.
Mhm.
Because but my hair shivered when you said it and the emotive verb versus the descriptor. I want to dominate you or I want to submit to you is an honest, true expression of sexuality and intimacy. The other is a description of a freaking recipe,
Mhm. Oh,
which
you know,
which
you know what's good about the verb too? That if I said, I want to dominate you, I want to submit to you. One, it implies it's you and me, right? Personalizes it. Two, it implies temporal, meaning there will be an end. There will be a point in which we are done and we're going to go get pizza. Or we are done and I am calling Uber for you.
I am dominating you. The Uber is there.
Yeah. It is there. Yeah.
um, the flattening of just this idea of flattening, a teasing of a certain game and a certain logical fallacy, and I put those things in the same stew. Flattening of ideas is in a way killing of discord and killing of dialogue. Uh, in many ways, we now know and we now see that the culture and the moment and the zeitgeist are listening more. Um, you've been fighting this fight for a very long time. I have nothing but both appreciation and admiration to the process and the work you've put. Connecting all those together, what can we tell audiences, people, viewers, listeners The people out there, the they of this conversation, including my own, by the way. I'm learning from every single thing you're sharing today. What can we help? What can you help in addressing these conversations, as uncomfortable as they are?
Hmm. Okay, so many things there. When there is a reaction, notice inside when there is a reaction or discomfort, let it be, and let it be, listen to what's going on, and then later ask yourself, now, why was I getting pissed off about that? Or why was I reacting? Or what about this made me uncomfortable? I think there's a lot to be said about when there's a big feeling coming up to shut your mouth and notice what's happening around you. That's not to say let it pass, let it ignore, sweep it under the rug. All right, so think in terms of like dealing with a crisis situation, right? So we're talking about a cultural crisis, but let's bring it down to like there's a fire in your kitchen. That is an upsetting thing. At that moment, I could run around in circles and scream, fire, 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 fire. Or I could step back and survey the environment, take a moment and understand the environment and what's really happening around. Is it that the house is on fire and the kitchen is on fire? Or is it that there is a banana flambe happening and I just happened to look over and all I saw was flames and it just happens to be my dessert getting ready? I think emotionally too, there's and the internet culture is full of people going fire, 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 and not stepping back and going, what exactly is on fire? And what's around me? And where am I in this whole thing? Then you can react. If it is that the house is on fire, I need to 911 and grab the wife and the cats. If it is banana flambe, I need to go find a spoon.
How do you think you learned, or what is it in your past, or what is it in your origin story, the kernel of what you call you, that made you so comfortable leaning into the fear, leaning into the guidepost that is discomfort? I agree. Those are big, huge ass signposts with big flashing neon lights for self-actualization to take hold, at least in my humble knowledge of what is to be human, is to go into fear, to go into discomfort. In many ways, it's our mirror. In many ways, it's our reflective id or ego having their cries of help, of wanting to be better. What is the Midori answer to why you do this well?
Hmm.
Because you do.
Oh, good question. Well, it's funny. I don't think of myself as going into that, which is scary. I was a shy, timid, thinking child, and I didn't necessarily trust my emotion. Also, yeah, my mom, genius. I mean, like seriously, genius. Also, seriously, mentally ill. And seriously,
Often not often the same, right? Go on.
and fucking drama queen. Okay, mom, right? Grandma, salt of the earth, slightly grim, plain spoken, practical. And these two people, my grandmother raised me, so I'm watching this, and it's like two realities, right? And so I think as a little child, I didn't necessarily trust my emotion because crazy mom. So I would watch, and I was timid anyway, and a small, physically small and a timid child. So I would watch what was going on around me to try to understand the world. And I think that moment of wait, gather information, understand better, sort out my reaction, make a decision. I think it comes from, I think, being a
In between the two dynamics?
a timid child, a timid child who had this like sense that the world was really complicated, and I didn't
Huh.
know the world was really complicated and much bigger than I could possibly understand. I just kind of sit back and watch. Yeah, I was like the creepy gnome on the shelf.
If anything, you're a fearless warrior and a change maker to me. Uh, I often jest that our sense and our ability, and in general, just our capacity for control, starts and ends with our own skin. And what I mean by that is we are the masters of our reactions. We are not the masters of our circumstances. And it's a really interesting anecdote to think that you were in a dynamic that forced you into having a very deep understanding of the control over your reaction from such an earlier age. Can you merit? I'm not. I'm leading the witness. I apologize. But there is a connection there
Mhm.
between this understanding of your power in
Mhm.
your reaction, your power in your fearlessness, your power in taking agency from away from circumstance and into reaction.
Now, there's also another factor that's cultural as well, and my grandmother had a lot to do with this because I am mixed race, growing up in monoracial Japan,
Hmm.
right? So for mixed race children in Japan in the past, you if you could pass, you would try to pass, was one of the strategies, right? Or you would go to an international school and you just become foreigner. For me, I was in an in-between world. Japan is a super racist country.
Oh God,
Oh my
yes.
God. They're so racist that there's no dialogue around racism because racism is the problem of foreigners.
I got kicked out of a gay bar several times. I lived in Tokyo many, many years ago, but literally one of my Japanese coworkers had to explain to me that we are being kicked out.
Yeah.
He had to literally like verbalize, and I was just looking there with deer eyes. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember.
So incredibly racist. Oh, and the way that so discrimination is not illegal in Japan, and the way that you being kicked out of a gay bar would be explained that well, you are a foreigner, so you do not understand how things are done, and you would make everyone uncomfortable, and we would be uncomfortable that you don't know that you're rude. So it would be better to have you not there and thereby maintain social harmony. It's for everyone's own good.
Did you just give me one of your template responses? Because that was brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's how it, being kicked out of the gay bar, that was what was happening.
Wow.
Yep. And they don't see it as anything wrong. They see it as doing good to have you leave.
But because the responsibility is the overarching need of society, not the
Right.
individual, then I don't exist and I am a disruptor by virtue of being different.
Right. Exactly. And I was too by my genetic background.
How did
So
that play out? Yes, please.
my grandmother, who's white, my practical grandmother, who had a love of literature and probably foresaw what was in my potential future because of my ethnic background. She made sure that it was a really brilliant balance, not to hate my peoples, but to not be beholden, that to love Japan, but to she in a sense taught me to have the 10,000 mile view, the aerial view, to appreciate all that is Japan, but to also understand its flaws. And she set me up to be a global citizen because there would be no place for me as Japanese, right? So she had created a foundation for me that would allow me to understand that there's what I can see right now, and there is something much bigger than that I cannot see. That I am part of not this, but this.
I was about to say, may I ask a personal question? Of course I will. Um, Fabricio is from Brazil. I'm from Israel. You're from Japan. Um, I look at expats, and that is not a conclusion. This is not even an assumption. It's just a question. Uh, Maybe it's upbringing, but both Fabricio and now you and my included, all of us verbalize in one way or another the statement of it always felt as if I was bred to be a global citizen. It always felt as if my calling was away from my origin point, away from my anchor, away from my birth. I'm really curious. When did you feel that that global map became your home? When was that moment?
I suppose landing in New York in visits, um, I can fake it that I live there. I know I'm there enough, and I've got reliable couches. By the way, I'm always looking for places to couch surf in New York City, and looking for Airbnbs to stay and whatever. But I think my first real stay in New York, where I'm sleeping on the couch of a new friend, right? And it was in the Lower East Side,
Nice.
and I was crashing at an artist's loft, and I went downstairs. I hung out in the doorway and watched all these faces going by and life happening, and that I could drop into a mega city and just feel at home. And yeah, it's in a lot of ways, all major cities are quite interchangeable. London, Paris, New York, uh,
I
Moscow,
wholeheartedly agree.
Seoul. Yeah, I would know my way and know how to walk in a big city. Whereas, like, I don't know, put me in a village in Vermont and I'd be like, I passed through Wyoming, accidentally got pushed into Wyoming because of the fires in Colorado. Oh my God, it's really open.
It's I have to relate. I have almost a landlocked. So I had a conference years ago in Denver, and it took 2 days for me to start freaking the fuck out because it was landlocked. I I mean, freaking the fuck out. And I was supposed to be there 5 days, and I could not handle more than four. And it's a weird thing, but I'm like, I need the open space. I need the exit strategy. Maybe it's that. If I'm leaning into my own fear, maybe it's the
Yeah.
I need an out.
Yeah.
It does relate to bondage. We can totally dive into that at a different time. It does. But back then somebody asked me like, why can't I do bondage? I'm like, I'm too much of a control freak. Not that I don't want to give it away and learn to do that with somebody I'm intimately, that would be enough of a give. It'll be enough of a present. It'll be good. But back then I was, by the way, one of those, I'm a total top, I'm a dominant, which dismantled itself on its own accord so quickly. The moment people told me, listen, honey, there's this baseball field. You're playing in the bleachers by yourself. Wake up. And I am blessed by people like you and Race and even Mr. Marcus, as beachy fucker as he was. I
Yeah.
feel that way with the city in Denver in that conference. I'm like, you are tying me down and we're not that intimate.
So when did you feel like you were part of the global citizenship?
I think I will resonate with something you said to the idea of early stage wakefulness and the conversation that my mom maybe had. I always had this idealized version of my early learning of English as something that my mom would push, learning another language, and I thought she was prepping me for a broader and bigger world. I didn't know back then, and she told me that many years later, that I was the one pushing to learn another language as a 3-year-old, as a 4-year-old, specifically English. By the way, the motives of which are not that lofty. I just wanted to understand Transformers from the Jordanian television, and I couldn't read the Arabic subtitles. So I'm like, I really wanted to know Transformers. That's all.
Oh my God. Okay, so Batman in the old original Batman would show in Japan, and you know how the words would come up, pow, and all of
Bow,
that,
bow,
right?
bam,
And I would make my grandmother come in and read those.
and brilliant. So okay, let's dive into this just for a second. So wasn't there a moment of, you ask about the inkling towards a bigger world? Wasn't there a moment for you? Because for me, the moment the world opened up physically, like you said, landing in New
Mhm.
York. For me, it was landing in Amsterdam. First leather bar, first gay bar. It doesn't matter in terms of outside of Israel. I've been to gay bars and leather bars in Israel, not outside. But there was this moment that I was in another country. People were speaking another language that I know, and suddenly the web was just open. That was the moment for me when I landed in Amsterdam and walked into a gay bar. Specifically, it was the Cockring Leather Bar. It was just over. I knew that Israel was done.
Mhm.
It was that was not my country. My country is the world.
So I remember watching Sesame Street as a kid, and my grandmother would play Sesame Street, so I would get some English exposure, right? I didn't understand anything, right? Because I'm a Japanese speaker, and so there's Sesame Street going on. But I'm growing up in working class Tokyo, so there are all these in Sesame Street. You got the stoops, and you got all the houses. I think suburban kids won't relate to this. All the houses are right on the street, right?
Right.
And the lives are lived right here, and everybody's on the stoop. I related to that. Um, but there were all these people I didn't know, all these people that looked in a way that I didn't know, right? I had never seen a black person except for on Sesame Street. And that seemed just as real as Big Bird to me because it wasn't in my reality. And then I realized as an adult, as a child, I had thought I was relating to one character, one human character. I had a lot of puppet characters I related to, but the human character that I saw representation and reflection was, well, thought there was one Asian there. Maria. I thought Maria was Asian because there weren't any other Asians on the show. And I had no knowledge of Latinx, Hispanic, or Mexican. So the one person that seemed close was Maria. So Maria was the person that I related to the show. And then later on, I would come to the US and, oh, there's all of these different peoples. Oh, I don't think Maria is Asian. Oh,
And there's a point of convergence of realizing the world is A, much bigger, B, more complex, and then C, extraordinarily more diverse.
right. And I was trying to find the one face I could relate to. So at least the fact that I assigned her as my proxy meant I could put myself on Sesame Street. So it wasn't such a bad thing. But then later on as an adult, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I really didn't see any different people in the place I grew up.
But to echo something, Israel, yes, Israel is very racist too. If you didn't know that, it still runs an apartheid state.
Mhm.
For fuck's sake, um, to take this idea of an origin story that came from an homogenous culture, and then to look at you and look at your work, expressive as it is when it comes to both diversity and engaging in terms of discord and conversations around diversity. Uh, and there's a lot of elements and pieces in what I'm hearing in your story that almost thrusted you into those kind of conversations between mother and grandmother, between art as an expression rather than expression as art, because one is limiting, the other is pretty empowering. Um, and looking at the specific conversation that got us to this conversation, which is you standing up, and I will correct me if the term is off in any way, please. Standing up to the stupidity or the flatness of other online expression that in many ways limit us today, and then seeing there's a broader conversation, as you've pointed out beautifully. The world is waking up to a much broader conversation. uh, yeah, which is yes, it's hopeful.
So, as far as the standing up thing, is there an alternative to that of a sarcastically leaning onto a bar, or like a lighting upon a snarky bar stool against?
All of it, Barstool and Lena McKesson. So
It's a lot less stress if I can get a little, bar stool to sit on and go, yep,
your words are evocative, and that analogy is enlightening, because what am I doing personally in here if not pushing for that corner in the town square, if it is not leaning into that bar and going, so
yeah. If I'm standing up against, there are a lot of people that do really well with, standing up against, and I'll pull up a comfortable bar stool and raise an eyebrow.
and I admire you for both thoroughly. In many ways, if many people can, and I do believe this idea of critical mass, I really do. I think that's how things actually move. It's not the loud minorities, but rather the majority, the silent majority that whispers a little becomes this avalanche, or
Mhm.
in inescapable cry.
It's always
Uh,
cool, isn't it? You know, it's like one note comes in and another voice and another voice, and next thing you know, it's an entire chorus. Yeah. I'll still have my bar stool though. I mean, standing up all the time, that is a hell of a lot of, that's a lot of core.
it's like, for the record, you have it. I don't. I lose my breath now just walking up 5 fucking steps. I
And we
wish. I
live in
wish.
San Francisco. We can't afford to not be able to go up the steps, for God's sakes. I mean, it's not like, you know.
We can. If one day I have the privilege of having another conversation with you, we can dive into the sexuality or lack thereof within COVID, even within substantiated relationships, even within. But that's a whole other tangent. You pull a bar stool, but you are being very humble to allow for other people to have the voice without losing a voice, like you just described so eloquently. A note and a note and a note, and then a chorus. In many ways, describes what you do with your art. At least to me, from an observer perspective.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's well deserved. If we can elevate, if you can elevate, if I can elevate, if we as a culture, the you that's watching us right now, those singular notes, I do believe in greater good. I do believe in greater societal upswing or uptake of goodness. We have progressively done better. We just really need to divorce ourselves from our own lifetime, which is difficult. And for people like you that are warriors, as much as you want to be humble about the bar stool that you take next to a bar and humble around your, mm-hmm, you have been a change maker. You are a change maker, and I know you will be a change maker for many. Um, what would be your parting words for somebody that wants to take on the mental, even a little, even on a personal level, of adding a note to the chorus or slipping that soul just closer to the bar?
Mm. Be forgiving of yourself. I think that's it. That's probably a good start.
It's a profound one. On that note, thank you. This has been, I truly admire, and I'm a huge fan. You're both a voice to listen to and to be reckoned with, and you're an empowering human being. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.